I thought this would be another ordinary Thanksgiving until the phone call that changed everything. My name is Renata Albright, and I am 72 years old. Outside my window this November morning, the maple trees in our Boston suburb have dropped their last leaves, leaving bare branches that scratch against the gray sky like old fingers. But this dreary view can't bring down my mood because Thanksgiving is only 2 weeks away. I am still processing all of this as I tell you. I wonder if any of you watching have been through something similar. Please let me know where you are from in the comments sometimes. It helps to know I am not alone in this. If my story resonates with you, subscribe because there is more I need to share. What happened next completely blindsided me. Thanksgiving has always been my favorite holiday. My dear husband Richard died 12 years ago, but I've never stopped loving this special day. This holiday means everything to me: home, warmth, and the best way I know to show my love through cooking, on my kitchen counter. I've written out my shopping list with careful detail, something I've perfected over the years. An 18-pound turkey, golden and beautiful rich smooth gravy made from scratch, cooked for hours until it is just right. 3 different kinds of stuffing, each one special in its own way. 3 potato dishes to make everyone at my table happy. Fresh cranberry sauce, sweet and tart, bubbling on my stove. It is how I wrap my family in comfort, how I show them they matter and are loved. I was humming an old song, something Richard used to whistle while working in his shop, when the phone rang. The caller ID showed Michael, my son. "Mom, hi. Listen, we have a serious problem here." Michael's voice sounded professional as always, but I could hear something urgent underneath that made my mother's worry kick in right away. "What is wrong, sweetheart?" My heart started beating faster with that parental fear that never goes away, no matter how old your kids get. "Our water heater has a bad leak. The repair guy says we need to replace it right now before it damages the foundation and everything around it." "Oh my goodness. How much money will that require?" I asked. My fingers unconsciously tightening around the fabric of my kitchen apron as worry began to settle in my chest. "The heating and cooling company has given us a quote for $8,500. But Mom, I need to be completely honest with you. We are in an extremely tight financial position right now." I found myself frowning as confusion clouded my thoughts. "Why are you experiencing financial difficulties? Both of you maintain excellent employment." Michael works as a regional sales director for a financial technology company, earning well into 6 figures annually, not including his substantial performance bonuses. His wife Maya describes herself as a successful Instagram influencer, though the details of this profession have always remained somewhat mysterious to me. Maya's income has been considerably less consistent than we anticipated. Additionally, we have encountered several unexpected expenses that have stretched our budget beyond its limits. He delivered this explanation in that casual, dismissive tone people use when describing minor inconveniences. However, I was well aware that Maya's income had never possessed any real stability. Her supposed sponsorship deals appeared to be largely fraudulent schemes, while her expenditures on luxury goods and cosmetic procedures continued unabated month after month. Michael's voice continued through the receiver, carrying that familiar note of earnest pleading that I had heard so many times before. "Would you be able to help us with this situation? We absolutely promise we can repay you completely after the new year arrives." The word repay struck me like a small, sharp needle. He had never returned a single penny from any of our previous loans. Just last month, I had transferred $6,200 to his account, ostensibly to cover orthodontic treatment for my grandson Jack. Yet within days of that transaction, I discovered photos on Maya's Instagram account showcasing her newly enhanced, unnaturally plump lips, the unmistakable result of expensive cosmetic injections. "Michael, that represents a considerable sum of money," I replied, feeling a deep weariness settle into my bones. "I completely understand that, Mom, and I absolutely hate having to ask you for this. But if we fail to address this problem immediately, the entire house could suffer catastrophic water damage. We simply cannot afford to let that happen." I fell silent, processing his words. A leaking water heater did indeed sound like a genuine, urgent emergency that could not be ignored or postponed. This involved their home, the place where my grandchildren slept each night. I could not bear the thought of them living in dangerous or unhealthy conditions. I told myself this repeatedly, struggling to suppress the growing unease that was spreading through my chest like cold water. "Very well, Michael. I will help you with this situation." Immediately after ending our call, I accessed my online banking system and initiated a transfer of $8,500 to his account. I stared at the confirmation screen for several long minutes, my heart heavy with prayers that this time, this money was truly intended for the safety and security of my family. What I could not have known at that moment was that the actual cost of a new water heater was merely $2,800. Michael and Maya had contributed only $1,200 of their own money toward this purchase. The remaining $7,300 I had provided, they had quietly pocketed an excess of $4,500. On the very afternoon my transfer was completed, Maya placed an online order for a $2,200 Bottega Veneta woven handbag. She also booked a $1,300 weekend getaway package for herself and Michael at an exclusive resort and purchased a new $1,000 smartphone, simply because she desired an upgrade. 2 weeks later, on Thanksgiving morning at precisely 11 o'clock, my doorbell chimed. I smoothed my lovely navy blue dress, checked my reflection one final time, and opened my front door with genuine anticipation filling my heart. My home had been decorated with autumn colors and fresh flowers, creating an atmosphere of warmth and celebration. The air was thick with the magnificent aromas of roasting turkey and warming spices that had been developing since dawn. "Grandma, everything smells absolutely incredible." 11-year-old Jack burst through my doorway like an enthusiastic cannonball, throwing his arms around my waist with unrestrained affection. "Jack, my darling boy, come help your grandmother in the kitchen. We still need to finish preparing the stuffing together." I laughed as I ruffled his sandy hair, feeling my earlier worries evaporate in the warmth of his genuine enthusiasm. 14-year-old Emma also offered me an embrace, though hers carried a certain hesitation and reservation. I understood that her parents had been systematically teaching her to view me as an unfashionable, out-of-touch grandmother whose opinions and traditions held little value in their modern world. As for Michael and Maya, they walked directly into my living room and collapsed heavily onto my sofa, as though they had just completed an exhausting cross-country journey rather than a 20-minute drive from their suburban home. "Renata, we are absolutely exhausted. We have been dealing with enormous stress related to this whole water heater situation." Maya sighed dramatically, as though the $8,500 had emerged from her own hard-earned savings. "I can certainly imagine how challenging that must have been. I am so grateful I was able to provide assistance," I replied with gentle sincerity. "Yes, you certainly did help us. Thank you for that." Michael's response carried the casual tone one might use when acknowledging someone passing the salt at dinner, utterly devoid of genuine gratitude or recognition of the sacrifice involved. I returned to my kitchen and resumed my preparations. After several minutes, Maya followed me in. "Renata, is there anything at all I can do to help you?" she asked, though her eyes wandered everywhere except toward the actual work occupying my hands. "You could assist me with the stuffing preparation, if you would like. The process is quite straightforward, and I would be happy to guide you through each step." I responded with hopeful enthusiasm. A flash of irritation crossed Maya's perfectly sculpted features. "Actually, I can feel the beginning of a severe headache developing. Do you happen to have any pain relief medication available? There should be some in the guest bathroom medicine cabinet." She turned and walked away, never to return to the kitchen again. There was no headache, naturally. This was simply her well-practiced method for escaping any form of physical labor or contribution. A short while later, Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Mom, the football game has started in the living room. Would you mind if I watch it?" "Of course, sweetheart. Dinner should be ready around 3 o'clock this afternoon," I replied, despite the fact that my feet were already beginning to ache from hours of standing and preparation. "Perfect. No problem at all. He immediately returned to the living room, sinking deep into my sofa cushions with his gaze fixed intently on the television screen. It never occurred to him to offer assistance. In his worldview, elaborate holiday meals simply materialized on dining room tables through some form of domestic magic that required no acknowledgement or appreciation. Throughout the morning and afternoon, I labored alone in my kitchen. The turkey required constant attention, basted every 30 minutes to achieve that perfect golden hue. The stuffing demanded careful monitoring to ensure the proper balance of moisture and texture. The cranberry sauce needed stirring to prevent burning. The dinner rolls required precise timing to emerge warm and fragrant at exactly the right moment. My back ached from hours of bending over the oven. My feet throbbed from standing on the hard kitchen tiles. My hands were raw from constant washing and handling hot dishes. Yet I persevered, driven by decades of habit and the deep-seated belief that this labor was my gift of love to my family. From the living room, I could hear the sounds of televised football and casual conversation. Occasionally, laughter would drift through the doorway, accompanied by the rustle of comfortable bodies settling deeper into my furniture. Not once did anyone inquire whether I needed assistance. Not once did anyone offer to help carry a dish or stir a pot. I had become invisible, a servant whose efforts were expected but not acknowledged. At precisely 3 o'clock that afternoon, I finally carried all of my carefully prepared dishes to the dining room table. The turkey emerged perfectly golden brown, its skin crispy and glistening. The stuffing released warm, comforting aromas of sage and thyme. The mashed potatoes were smooth and creamy as silk. The cranberry sauce provided the perfect balance of tart and sweet flavors. The dinner rolls were soft and fragrant, still warm from the oven. This was a flawless Thanksgiving feast, created through an entire day of exhausting labor and overflowing with the love that had motivated every step of its preparation. We gathered around my dining room table, with me seated at one end and Michael at the other. The children's eyes widened with appreciation at the magnificent spread before them. Even Maya seemed momentarily impressed by the sheer abundance and beauty of the meal. "I am so deeply grateful that we can all be together today," I said with a warm smile. "Shall we each share something we feel thankful for this year?" "I am thankful for Grandma's amazing cooking," Jack announced immediately, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. "I am thankful for our family," Emma said quietly, her expression thoughtful and sincere. Michael cleared his throat with deliberate formality. "I am thankful that Mom was able to help us navigate this water heater crisis. That assistance was truly a lifesaver for our family." "I am grateful as well," Maya chimed in with practiced smoothness. "Renata, your generosity really means so much to all of us." I forced myself to smile as I responded. "I am happy I could provide help. That is what family members do for each other." Yet even as these words left my mouth, a hollow sensation gripped my chest. Deep in my intuition, I knew with growing certainty that the water heater had not cost anywhere near the amount Michael had claimed. I simply did not yet know the exact extent of their deception. The conversation during dinner remained surface level and polite. We discussed the children's school activities, the weather, and current events. But nothing of real substance. I found myself studying their faces as they spoke. What I observed instead was a kind of distant politeness, as though they were dining with a helpful acquaintance rather than a beloved family member. Michael consumed his meal with mechanical efficiency, pausing occasionally to compliment the food in generic terms. Maya picked delicately at her portions while scrolling through her phone, despite my unspoken disappointment at this breach of table etiquette. The children ate with more enthusiasm, but even they seemed somewhat subdued, perhaps sensing the underlying tension that had settled over our gathering like a thin layer of dust. After dinner, something surprising occurred. Michael and Maya voluntarily offered to help with cleanup duties. This had never happened before in all our years of holiday gatherings. Immediately warning bells began clanging in my mind. Sure enough, while we were in the kitchen, Maya intercepted me with purpose. "Could we speak with you privately for a few minutes?" My heart sank like a stone. "Certainly. What is happening?" They guided me to the living room sofa and positioned themselves across from me, their posture suggesting a serious business negotiation rather than a family conversation. "We have been thinking about something important, and we wanted to discuss it with you," Maya began with calculated sweetness. Michael continued seamlessly. "We are considering taking a family vacation next summer. You know, to really reconnect and strengthen our family bonds." "That sounds wonderful," I replied cautiously. "Where are you thinking of going?" "We were hoping to rent a villa in Tuscany. Just for 1 week." Maya's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Italy. How marvelous that sounds. The challenge is, Mom, we cannot quite afford it financially. Not after having to replace the water heater so recently." Michael's voice grew heavy with manufactured burden. "Perhaps you should wait until you are able to afford it comfortably," I suggested with careful diplomacy. "Children really need this experience. Emma has been experiencing significant stress at school. Jack needs a complete break from routine." Maya immediately countered. I knew perfectly well that Emma was performing excellently in school, and that Jack was thriving in all areas of his young life. This was yet another fabrication. "And honestly, Mom, you would enjoy it tremendously as well. We could make it a multi-generational family trip. You could travel with us." Michael dangled this enticing possibility before dropping his bombshell. "We need to make reservations soon to secure favorable pricing. Perhaps $12,000 for the entire week, including flights for everyone." $12,000 represents a great deal of money, Michael," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my efforts to remain composed. "I completely understand that, Mom, but you have been so incredibly generous with our family, and we have reached a point where we genuinely need this opportunity." Michael leaned forward, lowering his voice and arranging his features into an expression of convincing anguish. "To be completely honest with you, things have been quite tense between Maya and me recently. A vacation like this would help us reconnect and strengthen our marriage." This represented the highest form of emotional manipulation. He was suggesting that their marriage teetered on the edge of collapse, and that I, as his mother, bore the responsibility to provide financial salvation. If I refused, I would become the person responsible for destroying my son's family. The guilt would be mine to carry. "Michael, I need time to consider this request thoroughly," I managed to say. But in the deepest part of my heart, I already knew I would eventually agree. I always agreed. That was my pattern, my weakness, my curse. They continued their presentation with the polished efficiency of seasoned salespeople. Maya produced glossy travel brochures featuring stunning photographs of Tuscan landscapes and luxurious accommodations. Michael presented detailed cost breakdowns and itineraries, all carefully calculated to make their request appear reasonable and well-planned. "Just imagine, Mom," Maya said with dreamy enthusiasm, "morning coffee on a terrace overlooking rolling vineyards afternoon, walks through ancient villages, family dinners featuring authentic Italian cuisine. It would create memories that would last forever for all of us." The vision was indeed seductive. I had always dreamed of visiting Italy, of experiencing the art and culture and history of that magnificent country. The possibility of sharing such an adventure with my grandchildren filled me with genuine excitement despite my growing suspicions about their true motivations. "We would handle all the planning and arrangements," Michael assured me. "You would simply need to pack your bags and enjoy yourself. No stress, no responsibility, just pure relaxation and family time." As they spoke, I noticed how skillfully they had orchestrated this entire presentation. The timing was perfect, arriving in the warm afterglow of our Thanksgiving dinner when my defenses were naturally lowered. The setting was ideal, surrounded by the comfortable familiarity of my own living room. Even their positioning was strategic, seated close together, presenting a united front while I sat alone on the opposite side of the coffee table. "I understand this is a significant financial commitment," Michael continued. "But when you consider the value of family experiences, the memories we would create together, The opportunity for the children to learn about different cultures and history, it really represents an investment in our family's future. Maya nodded earnestly. And honestly, Renata, you deserve this kind of luxury after everything you have given to our family over the years. You have been so generous, so supportive. This would be our way of finally including you in something special. Their words were carefully chosen to appeal to my deepest desires. The longing to be valued, the wish to create meaningful memories with my grandchildren, the hope that my financial support had genuinely contributed to something worthwhile. They understood exactly which emotional buttons to press and pressed them with surgical precision. Let me think about this overnight, I finally said, though my resistance was already crumbling under the weight of their persuasive presentation. They exchanged a quick glance of satisfaction before Michael responded. Of course, Mom. Take all the time you need. We just wanted to present the idea while it was fresh in our minds. As they prepared to leave that evening, the children hugged me with genuine warmth and affection. Emma whispered in my ear, "Thank you for the wonderful dinner, Grandma. I love you so much." Jack squeezed my hand and said, "This was the best Thanksgiving ever." Their innocent expressions of love and gratitude stood in stark contrast to their parents' calculated manipulation. These beautiful children had no idea they were being used as pawns in an elaborate scheme to extract money from their grandmother. They simply enjoyed spending time with me and appreciated the effort I had put into creating a special day for our family. After they departed, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the lingering aromas of our feast and the evidence of our celebration: crumpled napkins, empty wine glasses, and the general disarray that follows any successful gathering. The silence felt profound after hours of conversation and laughter. I found myself analyzing every moment of the evening, searching for clues about my family's true feelings toward me. Had their expressions of gratitude been genuine, or merely polite formalities? Did they truly appreciate the hours of labor I had invested in their meal? Or did they simply expect such efforts as their due? The more I reflected on our interactions, the more troubling patterns began to emerge. Maya's sudden headache had been suspiciously convenient, allowing her to escape any contribution to our meal preparation. Michael's immediate retreat to the television suggested that he viewed my home as a restaurant where service was provided without expectation of reciprocal effort. Even their offer to help with cleanup had been revealed as merely a prelude to their financial request. Most disturbing of all was the casual tone with which they had presented their vacation proposal. There had been no acknowledgement of the enormous sacrifice involved in providing $12,000. No recognition that this amount represented months of my Social Security income. No consideration of the impact such an expenditure might have on my own financial security. Instead, they had presented their request as though they were offering me a favor, graciously including me in their plans in exchange for my financial contribution. The underlying message was clear. My presence was welcome only when accompanied by my wallet. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind churning with questions and doubts. How had our relationship evolved into this transactional arrangement? When had my love and support been transformed into expected obligations? At what point had I stopped being a cherished mother and grandmother and become simply a source of funding for their desires? The Monday following Thanksgiving, I made a decision that would change everything. I had to discover the truth regardless of how painful it might prove to be. I created an excuse about visiting an old friend, then drove directly to Michael's house. I told them I wanted to personally inspect the new water heater to ensure everything was functioning properly and to put my maternal concerns to rest. Mom, you really do not need to examine it. The technology is quite complex and technical. Michael attempted to dissuade me. I simply want to see it for myself, sweetheart. I persisted with quiet determination. In the dimly lit basement, the brand new white water heater stood silently in the corner, looking efficient and modern. I casually inquired, "What brand did you purchase?" "It is a Rheem model, commercial grade quality," he answered quickly, perhaps too quickly. "That sounds excellent." I nodded approvingly, then posed the crucial question, "Do you have the receipt available? It will be important for warranty purposes." Michael's eyes immediately betrayed his anxiety. I believe Maya has it stored somewhere safe. I would like to review it, please. For warranty protection, I repeated with unmistakable authority in my voice. I will locate it later, he said, his discomfort becoming increasingly obvious. But I had already seen what I needed to see. There on the nearby workbench, partially hidden beneath some tools, lay a stack of documents. The top sheet had one corner visible, and on that corner, I glimpsed what I was looking for. Purchase price, $2,800. My heart plummeted into an abyss. I had provided $8,500. The actual cost was $2,800. This meant they had stolen $5,700 from me. I felt dizzy and struggled to remain standing as the full weight of their betrayal crashed over me. The room seemed to spin around me as the implications of this discovery sank in. This had not been an emergency requiring immediate financial assistance. This had been a calculated deception designed to extract maximum money for minimum justification. They had looked me in the eye, spoken of family obligations and gratitude, all while planning to pocket the majority of my contribution. After we returned upstairs, I excused myself to dispose of some trash. Then, with trembling hands, I opened one of their garbage bags sitting near the garage door. This action made me feel pathetic and desperate, but I was beyond caring about my dignity. Within moments, I discovered exactly what I was searching for. A receipt from Nordstrom department store listing $2,200 worth of clothing and accessories, including a Bottega Veneta handbag I had seen featured on Maya's Instagram account. There was also a booking confirmation from an exclusive resort for a $1,300 weekend package for 2 guests. The dates on both documents fell within the week I had transferred the money. I sat in my car afterward, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, yet my hands shook so violently I could not start the engine. The evidence was undeniable. They had used my emergency assistance to fund luxury purchases and recreational activities. While I had believed I was helping protect my grandchildren's home, they had been calculating how to maximize their personal benefit from my generosity. Finally, I understood with crystal clarity. I was not merely being used. I was being systematically and ruthlessly deceived by my only son and his wife. The drive home passed in a blur of tears and rage. I had spent decades believing that my financial support was helping my family build better lives, create security, and navigate temporary difficulties. Instead, I had been financing a lifestyle of frivolous consumption while they perfected their skills as manipulative predators. Every previous loan suddenly appeared in a new light. The orthodontic treatment for Jack that had coincided with Maya's cosmetic injections. The car repair that had been followed immediately by expensive vacation photos on social media. The home improvement project that had somehow resulted in designer furniture purchases. Pattern after pattern of deception stretching back years. I had been so willing to believe in their emergencies, so eager to help, so desperate to maintain our family connection, that I had ignored obvious inconsistencies and warning signs. My love for them had made me vulnerable to exploitation, and they had taken full advantage of that vulnerability. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, staring at the remnants of our Thanksgiving feast still scattered across my counters. The beautiful meal I had prepared with such care now seemed like a mockery. While I had been laboring to express my love through food, they had been in my living room planning their next financial extraction. Thanksgiving was supposed to celebrate gratitude and appreciation, but for Michael and Maya, Thanksgiving held no gratitude whatsoever, only entitlement. While I labored in the kitchen for an entire day, pouring my heart and soul into every dish I prepared, they lounged on my sofa calculating how to extract the next $12,000 for their Italian vacation. For them, Thanksgiving was not about giving thanks. It was about taking more. I had always believed that preparing elaborate meals was my way of expressing love. I had convinced myself that repeatedly meeting their financial demands was how I maintained our family bonds. But when I saw that receipt showing the true cost of $2,800, when I held evidence of their luxury shopping spree in my trembling hands, I recognized something profoundly disturbing about our relationship. Thanksgiving meant giving to me. To them, it meant taking from me. The most terrifying realization was that when Michael said thank you for helping us, his casual, dismissive tone clearly communicated, "This is what you owe us, Mother. This is your obligation." In that moment of devastating clarity, I understood that I was not helping my son build a better life. I was financing predators who happened to share my blood. The following days passed in a haze of emotional turmoil. I found myself replaying every conversation, analyzing every interaction, searching for signs I had missed. How long had they been deceiving me? How many of their supposed emergencies had been fabricated? How much of my retirement savings had been diverted to fund their luxurious lifestyle? More troubling still was the recognition of my own complicity in this arrangement. I had wanted so desperately to be needed, to feel valuable to my family, that I had ignored obvious warning signs and rationalized away clear evidence of deception. My fear of being rejected or forgotten had made me an easy target for manipulation. I began to understand that my constant financial assistance had not strengthened our family bonds. Instead, it had corrupted them beyond recognition. By always saying yes to their requests, I had taught them to view me not as a beloved family member, but as a reliable source of funding. My generosity had transformed into obligation, my love into transaction. The children, thankfully, remained innocent of their parents' schemes. Jack and Emma genuinely loved spending time with me, appreciated my efforts on their behalf, and treated me with the natural affection grandchildren show their grandparents. But even they were being affected by this toxic dynamic, learning through observation that their grandmother existed primarily to provide financial support rather than emotional connection. I realized that if I continued enabling this pattern, I would be teaching my grandchildren that love could be purchased, that family relationships were fundamentally transactional, and that manipulation was an acceptable method of getting what you wanted from people who cared about you. This was not the legacy I wanted to leave them. The decision to change course would not be easy. Decades of established patterns could not be altered overnight. Michael and Maya would not accept this transformation gracefully. They had become accustomed to my financial support and would undoubtedly escalate their emotional manipulation when that support was withdrawn. But for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten: clarity. The fog of confusion and self-doubt that had clouded my judgment for so long was finally beginning to lift. I could see our relationship for what it truly was, stripped of the illusions and rationalizations that had sustained it. I called Michael the following week and informed him that I would not be contributing to their Italian vacation. The conversation was brief and tense. "But Mom, we have already started making plans. The children are so excited about this trip. Then you will need to find another way to fund it, or perhaps plan something more affordable. I cannot believe you are being so selfish after everything we have done for you." This accusation was particularly galling, given what I now knew about their deception. "What exactly have you done for me, Michael?" The silence that followed was telling. He could not articulate a single meaningful contribution they had made to my life, because there were none. Our relationship had been entirely one-directional, with resources flowing constantly from me to them, while they provided nothing in return except the privilege of their presence at holiday gatherings. "This is not about being selfish," I continued. "This is about establishing healthier boundaries in our relationship." The conversation ended with him hanging up abruptly, and I did not hear from them for several weeks. Initially, this silence was painful, confirming my worst fears about being abandoned if I stopped providing financial support. But gradually, I began to appreciate the peace that came with their absence. No urgent phone calls about fabricated emergencies. No elaborate presentations about expensive vacations. No guilt-inducing conversations about family obligations. Instead, I found myself rediscovering interests and activities I had neglected. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class. I began volunteering at a nearby food bank, finding deep satisfaction in helping people who genuinely needed assistance rather than those who simply wanted additional luxury. Most importantly, I began to rebuild my relationship with my grandchildren on terms that were not financially mediated. I invited Jack and Emma to spend individual afternoons with me, during which we could focus entirely on each other, without the distraction of their parents' ulterior motives. These visits were revelatory, showing me how much I had missed by allowing financial transactions to overshadow genuine emotional connection. Emma and I spent hours in my garden, planting bulbs for spring flowers while discussing her hopes for high school and beyond. She was intelligent, thoughtful, and far more perceptive than her parents gave her credit for. During one of our conversations, she mentioned feeling uncomfortable when her parents asked me for money, indicating that even she had sensed the inappropriate nature. Jack and I worked together on a model airplane, his enthusiasm and patience reminding me of his grandfather Richard at that age. He spoke openly about school, friends, and his dreams of becoming a pilot, sharing confidences he had never revealed during our formal holiday gatherings. These intimate conversations were worth more to me than all the expensive meals I had ever provided. When Christmas approached, Michael and Maya reached out again, presumably hoping that the holiday spirit would restore my previous generosity. They invited me to Christmas dinner with obvious reluctance, making it clear that my attendance was conditional on my willingness to resume financial support. I declined their invitation and instead spent Christmas Day volunteering at a shelter for homeless families. The gratitude I received from people who truly had nothing was profoundly different from the entitled appreciation I had grown accustomed to from my own family. These strangers thanked me for ladling soup and serving bread with an emotional sincerity that my son had never displayed when receiving thousands of dollars. That evening, alone in my quiet house, I reflected on the transformation that had occurred over the past month. The desperate need for approval that had driven me to financial extremes was gradually being replaced by a deeper sense of self-worth based on genuine contribution rather than monetary transaction. I realized that I had spent years confusing enabling with loving, support with subsidy, generosity with doormat behavior. True love sometimes required saying no. Authentic support sometimes meant allowing people to face the consequences of their own choices. Real generosity came from giving freely rather than from obligation or manipulation. The new year brought new challenges as Michael and Maya realized that my changed behavior was not temporary. They began employing more sophisticated emotional manipulation, enlisting the children to make requests on their behalf, and fabricating increasingly elaborate crises that supposedly required my intervention. But I had learned to recognize these tactics for what they were. Each manufactured emergency was evaluated with clear-eyed skepticism rather than automatic compliance. Each request for assistance was examined for genuine need rather than fabricated urgency. Each attempt to induce guilt was met with calm resistance rather than panicked accommodation. This process was not without pain. There were moments when I questioned my new approach, wondering whether I was being too harsh or unreasonable. The fear of losing my family completely sometimes threatened to override my determination to maintain healthy boundaries. But gradually, something unexpected began to happen. As I stopped responding to their financial demands with automatic compliance, Michael and Maya were forced to find other ways to relate to me. Stripped of their ability to manipulate me through manufactured crises, they began to engage in more authentic conversations during our increasingly rare interactions. The change was subtle at first. Instead of calling only when they needed money, Michael occasionally phoned simply to check on my well-being. Maya began asking about my volunteer work and painting classes with what appeared to be genuine interest rather than polite formality. Most significantly, they started involving me in family decisions that had nothing to do with financial contribution. When Emma needed advice about high school course selection, they asked for my input based on my experience as an educator, rather than my capacity as a funding source. When Jack expressed interest in learning piano, they inquired whether I would be willing to help him practice rather than whether I would pay for lessons. These interactions were tentative and often awkward, like people learning to speak a new language after years of miscommunication. But they represented the possibility of rebuilding our relationship on healthier foundations based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The process of transformation continued throughout the following year. There were setbacks and challenges, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But gradually, I learned to trust my instincts about genuine versus manufactured emergencies, appropriate versus excessive requests for assistance, and healthy versus manipulative family dynamics. Most importantly, I rediscovered the joy that comes from relationships based on love rather than transaction. My connections with Jack and Emma deepened as they learned to value my presence for its own sake rather than for the financial benefits it might provide. My friendships with people in my book club and painting class flourished as I invested emotional energy previously drained by family manipulation into more reciprocal relationships. I also began to heal financially. The constant drain of fabricated emergencies and luxury funding had been slowly depleting my retirement savings, creating genuine anxiety about my own future security. By redirecting those resources toward my own needs and legitimate charitable contributions, I was able to rebuild a stable financial foundation for my remaining years. As I sit here now, 2 years after that revelatory Thanksgiving, I can see how profoundly my life has changed. The desperate need for approval that once drove me to financial extremes has been replaced by a quiet confidence based on authentic self-worth. The fear of abandonment that made me vulnerable to manipulation has been tempered by the knowledge that relationships requiring constant monetary lubrication are not worth preserving. The holidays now hold different meaning for me. Thanksgiving has returned to its intended purpose as a celebration of genuine gratitude rather than an opportunity for financial extraction. Christmas has become a season of joy rather than anxiety about expensive gift expectations. These occasions are smaller now, quieter, but infinitely more meaningful. I still prepare elaborate meals, but now they are for people who truly appreciate the effort involved, rather than those who view such labor as their due. My volunteer work at the food bank has introduced me to families who express heartfelt gratitude for simple assistance, providing the emotional fulfillment I had sought, but never found in my previous family dynamics. The relationship with Michael and Maya continues to evolve slowly. They have learned that financial manipulation will no longer work, and this knowledge has forced them to develop more authentic ways of connecting with me. The process is gradual and sometimes frustrating, but it represents genuine progress toward healthier family relationships. My grandchildren remain the bright spots in this transformed landscape. Emma is now in high school, excelling academically and growing into a thoughtful young woman who values our conversations and respects my perspectives. Jack continues to share his dreams and aspirations with me, and I have the privilege of watching him develop into a kind and curious person. These relationships with my grandchildren have taught me that love does not require constant financial demonstration. The time and attention I give them freely is far more valuable than any monetary contribution. They seek my advice because they trust my wisdom, not because they want my money. They enjoy my company because they genuinely like spending time with me, not because they hope to receive financial benefits. This transformation has not been without losses. Certain friendships that were based primarily on my willingness to provide financial assistance have naturally faded. But these departures have made room for more authentic relationships with people who value me for who I am rather than what I can provide. I have learned that true generosity comes from strength rather than weakness, from choice rather than obligation, from love rather than fear. When I help others now, it is because I genuinely want to assist them, not because I am afraid of being rejected if I refuse. This shift in motivation has made my charitable activities far more fulfilling and effective. The financial resources I once spent on manufactured emergencies and luxury funding are now directed toward causes and organizations that create real positive impact. My volunteer work has expanded to include financial literacy education for low-income families, helping them avoid the kinds of predatory relationships I once tolerated in my own life. Perhaps most importantly, I have discovered that self-respect is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Protecting yourself from exploitation is not unloving. These lessons, learned painfully late in life, have transformed not only my family relationships, but my entire approach to human interaction. The woman who once anxiously awaited phone calls about fabricated emergencies has been replaced by someone who approaches such communications with calm skepticism. The grandmother who once measured love through financial sacrifice now understands that true affection cannot be purchased or demanded. The mother who once enabled destructive behavior in the name of family loyalty now recognizes that authentic love sometimes requires difficult conversations and firm boundaries. This Thanksgiving, as I prepare a modest meal for myself and a few close friends who have earned their place at my table through genuine affection rather than family obligation, I am truly grateful. Not for the expensive lessons I have learned or the painful growth I have experienced, but for the peace that comes with authentic relationships and the freedom that accompanies financial boundaries. The holidays now represent what they were always meant to celebrate: genuine gratitude, authentic connection, and the simple pleasure of sharing good food with people who appreciate both the effort involved and the love it represents. This is the Thanksgiving I had been seeking all along, though I never realized it was possible until I found the courage to stop buying the illusion of family harmony and start building relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stop giving everything away and start holding something back for yourself. Sometimes protecting your own dignity is the greatest gift you can offer to a relationship that has lost its way. And sometimes the person who needs your generosity most is the one looking back at you in the mirror. That is the end of our story for today. We hope you enjoyed this journey of love and vengeance. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your insights and perspectives are what make our community truly special. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the next captivating tale from Love Vengeance. Each like and share helps us continue to bring you stories that resonate. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, take care and keep those stories close to your heart.